Alright, hi, welcome back. So, where we left off, my dad was in severe pain on my birthday. He ended up having a stroke. He was going to have surgery to break the clot in his brain and to remove it. That was what we talked about in the last video. It was also revealed, I forgot to mention this in that video, at some point in time that my dad does not have insurance. So he had been telling all of us this whole time and assuring all of us, oh, I have insurance, I just got this new insurance, blah, 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 blah. Didn't have insurance. So they came in and of course were like, well, we're going to have to try to figure this out. Fine. I mentally said that's future Taylor's problem at that point. That was just future me's problem. I don't have time to worry about this. I don't have time to focus on this right now. I'm gonna need to focus on this at a later time and date. So we go in the next morning, and by we I mean myself, his girlfriend, and his daughter. My mom had a work meeting that morning, and so she was planning on coming in when she was done with that meeting, stopping by and being there for a little bit. So again, I'm there with my dad's girlfriend and my dad's girlfriend's daughter by myself, which is super awkward, but it is what it is, and I've been in more awkward situations before, so just kind of suck it up. He's crying and scared, of course, because, who wouldn't be, I guess, in those types of situations? But, with my dad, you have to be very assertive in telling him that it's going to be okay, and usually that tends to calm him down. Otherwise, he'll, again, get more hysterical, tends to cry a lot more, tends to start threatening to try to get up, starts ripping cords off. So I just assertively tell him, you're going to be fine, you're going to be okay, this needs to be done, you need to just suck it up. You're going to be fine. And I again, take the very tough love approach. At this point, I think they're kind of used to it because they saw it very clearly the night before. And so I take that approach again. Full disclosure, these beginning parts are a little fuzzy for me because I really wasn't sleeping at all. Obviously, I had only had like a few hours of sleep at that point. And also so much has happened since then that it's hard for me to keep track of all of the details, which is why, again, I'm trying to get this out here now because I'm literally like losing things by the day. So he goes in for his CT scan before the first procedure, right? Because they need to make sure that nothing else is happening, nothing else is going on. So they take him into a CT scan before the first procedure to remove the clot. So I'm sitting in there with his girlfriend and the daughter. I don't remember, she left for a little bit. So it was just the girlfriend and I, and we just start to chat. And at first I'm trying to make some simple small talk because I don't know what to say. I'm very uncomfortable. And I could tell she's a little bit uncomfortable too, but she also seems very curious. Like she has a lot of questions, which same, right? But I'm used to meeting, especially women who have a lot of questions about my dad and are asking me a lot of questions about him, his motivations, what's true, what's not. So I'm used to this. So I'm preparing myself like, okay, here we go. What is she going to ask? What did he tell her? What did he say? And so she starts talking about my mom because, and this part's a little bit fuzzy for me, but I feel like I was talking to her about how they divorced each other, like how they ended up leaving each other. And so my understanding is like, I tell her the story of what happened. Cause again, I was like 6 at the time. So this is, some people would be like, you're too young to remember. It's pretty clear for me even still how this happened, how the story happened. And I can tell that here. My dad, again, had a lot of anger issues, had a lot of alcohol issues, and a lot of those types of things. And when he would get upset, he would start thrashing around, he would start breaking everything, screaming, could become violent. That was definitely a thing occasionally. And so those types of things would start to happen. One time he was doing that with my mom, and I was around 5 or 6, and I just lost it. I start screaming at him, and I kick him out of our house. Essentially, I start taking all of his clothes and anything that's his that I can see and I can reach in the room, and I start to just throw it out onto the yard. I'm literally throwing his things onto the lawn while he's sitting there yelling at my mom, and he's watching all of this happen because I just told him, I said, get out, and I remember saying something about, I'm going to call the cops, I'm going to call the police if you don't get out. And I'm throwing everything on the lawn, just trying to get him out of our house because it was that bad. And so that's essentially how they started to divorce, because I think that was an eye-opening experience for my mom, where she was like, wow, this is not good. My child is trying to kick her father out of the house. So that was an eye-opening experience for her. So they end up, divorcing, and then years, like not even that many years later, but they end up becoming more civil with each other, eventually become friends again. We all become friends again. He lived with us for a while. For quite a while, when he had another injury. He had appendicitis and wasn't able to work after that, because he'd ripped staples open, whole thing. And so he ends up moving in with us. He lived with us for quite a few years after that, but my parents were only friends at that point. They were not romantically together at all. They were just friends. So I'm telling her all of this. I'm telling her the story because, I try to beat people to the punch and just tell them this is what actually happened. So I told her, and she's like, your dad said that your mom cheated on him and that he caught her in bed with another man, in his bed in their house with another man. And I'm like, that absolutely did not happen. That is the opposite of what happened. My dad was compulsively cheating on my mom, as a matter of fact, with coworkers. He took me to a couple of parking lot rendezvous. Like, she found letters and all sorts of things, like in the back of her car, that he had written, scrapbook stuff he'd put together for these women. The whole thing. Like, so he was actively cheating on her. She was trying really hard to get him into like counseling, like through the church and everything else, because they were very involved in the church at the time. And so she was trying to do all of that. And my dad was cheating on her. My mom did not cheat. And I can say that with a fair degree of certainty, because again, most people would be like, well, how would you know? My mom was my primary caregiver. Okay. She was there pretty much the entire time for me growing up. And I would remember if there was a man around that wasn't my dad. I would remember if she took me to meet a friend that was a man or something, or if there was something amiss, because I remember it happening with my dad. So I'm pretty sure I would remember if something like that were to happen with my mom. So that's not just me remembering her spin on it. Like, from my lived experience, I don't remember her ever having any of that around her. There's no evidence to indicate that that did happen at all. So yeah, did not cheat. Like, she 1,000% did not cheat on my dad. So I say that. I was like, oh no. I tell her that, like, and I think I said it like that. And I start explaining to her again what happened. My dad compulsively cheating on her and all of that stuff. And she tells me that my dad told her again that, like, your mom is such a good, like she's like, yeah, he said that she was a really good woman and that he had a lot of love for her, but he just couldn't stay with her because she cheated on him so much. So I was like, no, absolutely not. So he comes back in from a CT scan after this bomb has been dropped on me, and after I dropped a bomb back and said, no, that didn't happen. And they're like, okay, we're going to wheel him in to the surgery, to the procedure, because at that point we had like waited a little bit, and there was like an unspoken agreement. We were not going to say anything. We were going to leave that alone. Weren't going to address that with my dad. And so we start walking to the procedure to get him into the procedure. And she's kind of like, as we're walking behind the hospital bed, she's like whispering things to me like, well, he was saying this and he was saying that. And I'm just sitting there like shaking my head like, no. Get to the room where the procedure is going to be taking place. I sign paperwork because I'm the next of kin. I'm the only child he has, and he doesn't have any other like power of attorney or anything. So I'm signing all the paperwork for him, and they take him in. So his girlfriend and I go and sit in the waiting room, and my mom texts me, and then she calls me and she says, I'm in the parking lot. I'm parking right now, because I had texted her and I said, Dad did it again. He told a lot of lies. And so I just wanted to warn you before you came in to emotionally prepare yourself, because my mom is a lot more of an emotional person than I am. And when I say emotional, I mean like she just gets her feelings hurt. Like she gets really upset and she gets really just sad when she feels like somebody has misrepresented her in some way. Her appearance and her sense of morality and even just like her reputation are just everything to her. So like any of this stuff would be horrifying to her. I knew this would be horrifying to her. And so I just texted her because I wanted to give her the heads up. I didn't want her to be ambushed with this, so she could kind of pre-process some of it. So she calls me and she's like, I'm in the parking lot. What happened? And I just tell her, I was like, Dad said you cheated on him. And she was like, okay, all right. So, she had a little bit of time to prepare, but not much. So she comes in, she shows up. Also during this time, his girlfriend's telling me about the breakup. She's telling me that they broke up for a little bit last year, because he wouldn't bring her around family. He kept talking about his family. He'd talk about his daughters. Keep that in mind for later. And that he wouldn't introduce her to any of that, and family was really important to her, and so she was just not okay with this. She was not okay with this. She wanted to meet his family and felt like it was kind of weird, which it is. That's a super big red flag. And so so that was kind of why they had broken up. I guess they'd broken up. My dad moved into an apartment that was, again, I mentioned, down the street from me. And he gave me a different reason as to why he had done that, but that was really why, is that he wasn't really living with her, but kind of was. He was living between a couple of different houses and would spend weekends over at her house, that sort of thing, but they weren't really like living together. And so she ended up moving out of there, and she's like, you need to get out. She moved out to another place and he moved into this apartment, but they still kept seeing each other even though they weren't like formally together anymore. So at that, it's a little hairy. Those types of relations are a little bit hairy. So anyway, my mom shows up, and my uncle shows up, my dad's brother. He shows up, and I try to kind of give him a warning because he tells me to, okay, I'm parking. Where is it? And I told him, okay, I'll meet you outside. Just so you know, Dad told a bunch of lies. None of us should be surprised. But a lot of it's coming out now because his girlfriend is here. And he's like, his girlfriend? I'm like, yeah, his girlfriend. So nobody knew that this girlfriend existed. I wasn't the only one. So I told my uncle, yeah, I'm like, yeah, no, the girlfriend is here. I don't know. My mom's also here. And so, So then my boyfriend comes. He shows up and he brought food for my uncle and for me, and so we go outside and we go eat, and we're just kind of chatting outside a little bit, making small talk, which means my mom is inside with the girlfriend and with the girlfriend's daughter. They're all sitting there in the waiting room. And so when we come back in, we find out all of these other things. There are so many more lies. So apparently my dad told this girlfriend that my cousin was okay, it's very confusing how this goes. I feel like I should make like a flow chart. So my dad's brother, one of my dad's brothers, it has some substance abuse problems, okay? And so he said that his child, one of his kids, because he has two kids, but that his daughter, that we adopted her. My mom adopted her because my dad couldn't take care of her because he had cancer. And so my mom adopted her and took her in, and now I'm taking care of her and raising her, and that she's lived with us this whole time. Super not true. Okay, obviously super not true. So he said that, and said that like she was raised as my sister, and called her my sister, and that I call her my sister. Not true. Okay. And so that's been a whole thing. And then trying to think what else happened. And then also apparently I was engaged. Not true. I have a boyfriend. We are not engaged. Which is fine. But yeah, said we were engaged and that we lived together and that we had a house together. And he was like, oh yeah, I go over and build things for her all the time. I built a pottery bench for her mom, and I built a plant bench for her, which is the biggest joke you've ever heard. Because if you know me, you know I kill things by looking at them on accident. Like I've killed air plants before, which you are not supposed to be able to kill. I should not be trusted around plants or any sort of thing that grows out of the ground. Do not trust me around it. It is a bad idea. And so he said he built me a plant bench, and that he comes over and cleans my pool. I do not have a pool. I wish I had a pool. I do not have a pool. Okay. So he's saying all these things. All this stuff is coming out. My mom was like, yeah. And he said this, and he said that your uncle is having an affair with somebody up in, Oxnard. And he said, and so all of us are like, he lied about all of us. We're all hearing these things, and my boyfriend is sitting there being like, what? Like, he's all like shocked too, because he's like, apparently we're married, like you didn't tell me, you know. And so we were kind of laughing, but I'm sitting there just like, I'm fully like, I can't believe he was telling all of these lies. Like, I just, like, that's so far out there. He's lied about so many things in my past. Like, I've run into people like, oh, your dad said you played volleyball at Los Osos. I am not built like a volleyball player, first of all, okay? But also, I've never played volleyball before. So he used to tell like I guess those aren't little lies, but kind of like little lies about things like that in the past. And so, but this was like a big one. This was, I have a sister who I'm raising and my mom is raising. Like, this was a big lie. I was fully shook, okay? And she's pulling up pictures and I'm like, yeah, that's my picture. That's a picture of me and my cousin. But I was literally like, in that picture, I was like 17 at the time. So it was more than 10 years ago, you know? And so it was just crazy. It was like literally all of this information started coming out. I'm sitting there because I also, as a fun side note, was supposed to go to Aruba that Friday. So it's literally like a few days away. I'm supposed to go to Aruba with my boyfriend. We try to go on a trip somewhere. And every year we like to do that. And he and I had been planning this for a while. He paid for everything. So, you know, he literally was so good about it. He showed up. He's like, no, like, it's just money. I don't care. Like, we'll cancel it. It's totally fine. And I'm sitting there listening to all of these things. And I'm like, no, we're going to Aruba. Like, my dad is literally lying about all of these things. And like, why would I possibly give up, like, providing he made it through the surgery well, right? And that nothing else happened. Why would I give up the opportunity to make all of these great memories with a man who's literally never betrayed me before? Like, he has always been so good to me. Like, it did not make any sense that I would possibly do that for a man who literally has lied about me, who's caused all these problems. I was like, no, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going with you. We are going to Aruba. We're going to have a fun time. We are not canceling. And so, yeah. So then the doctor comes out, tells us that the procedure was a success, and my dad is recuperating in the ICU. He's going to be out for a little bit, and he'll wake back up, and once he's settled in and woken up, we can go in and visit him. Great. We're all excited and happy about this. But also there's kind of an air of discontent, right? Because again, we all found out these lies that he told about us. So yeah, the procedure was successful. They were able to remove most of the clot, and that was really good news. Sorry, I had to get a drink of water. So it was mostly good news. My boyfriend leaves. My mom goes in and sees my dad. We go in together to visit him before she goes back to work. She keeps the peace, right? Again, there's just kind of this general unspoken rule that we're not gonna like directly talk about any of these things right now. He is still recuperating. He is very in and out, kind of hallucinating a little bit, but like, you know, he can't even see that well. He still has parts of his vision obstructed. Like he visibly can't see things. And so, you know, like, now is not the appropriate time to make him pay for and account for all of the sins of his lies, right? So yeah, my mom goes in, keeps the peace, you know, and hey, it's gonna be okay, comforts him, the whole thing. She's really good at doing that because, again, she's known him for a long time. She knows what she needs to say to comfort him. My dad starts to seem a little bit nervous, though. So I know he's starting to pick up on some things. Because the girlfriend and I go in to go visit him. He's awake. He's semi-lucid, as I mentioned. But again, my dad starts to seem really nervous. And I think it's because he's starting to put the pieces together. Like, uh-oh, my girlfriend is talking to my daughter. And I've been lying to my girlfriend about all these things. And I told my daughter I didn't have a girlfriend. And oh no, they're going to start talking because that's what's going to happen. And my daughter's not going to pretend like she has a sister when she doesn't, you know? And so... so the girlfriend kind of hints that she knows some of the lies now, right? She hints at a couple of things, doesn't directly address it though with my dad, says, you know, we'll deal with it later, but yeah, no, like, I've been having some interesting conversations with your ex-wife and with Taylor. Starts to kind of mention some of those things, right, to my dad. And my dad just seems a little bit nervous, but when he seems nervous, he starts to fall asleep or just kind of like looks off into the distance and ignores you, and I think just hopes that you'll go away. And so he's starting to do a lot of that. So the girlfriend's like, I need to go step out for a minute. She steps out. My uncle gets there. or like comes in with me. So we go in together. My uncle and I are like kind of joking and like and teasing my dad, because that's again how we as a family deal with it. My uncle is sitting there like elbowing him, like, you're in trouble, like you're in so much trouble right now. She knows who she knows, you know. And so we're all kind of like laughing and joking about this, like, you know, we're just kind of laughing because like, what else can you do? Like, this is just an absolutely insane situation. But again, he keeps falling asleep. And so at a certain point, like, I go out because there's only like, it's only 2 people allowed in the room at a time. So we have to keep cycling in and out. And so the girlfriend's sister shows up, brings dinner, which was really nice of her. Her daughter's best friend shows up too, and they're all there because all of these people know my dad. They all know my dad. Apparently they know me, or the version of him that he's told them, right? And so they're all showing up. I'm sitting there just like, I don't even, and I try to tell them, like, my dad has a very complicated relationship with the truth. But more than anything, I'm also just kind of very fully irritated because all I can keep thinking is about my birthday. If he had gone in when we literally drove him to the emergency room, if he had just gone in, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe he wouldn't have had a stroke. Maybe we wouldn't be dealing with all of this these insurance problems right now. Maybe we wouldn't be, you know, like, he wouldn't be as bad off. Because again, he can't feel half of his side now. He can't see very well. He's going to need physical therapy. He can't even use the bathroom by himself. He can't eat. He's not on solid foods. He's not even on liquids at this point. And also during this time, you know, he keeps asking people anytime they come in for cigarettes. He keeps asking people for soda. He keeps asking people for hot dogs. And I'm just like, that is why you're here in the first place. You are in this room because of your poor choices. Because again, had you taken care of your body, he's been smoking since he was like 13 years old. He's been smoking cigarettes, and he was 50 at that point, okay? Smoking his whole life. He drinks all the time. He eats really bad. He doesn't exercise. He hits all of the whole checklist down the stroke pipeline, okay? So it's one of those things where it's like, you just survived a stroke and you're asking for all the things that put you here. Like, I was very frustrated by that. But also, again, just it's very frustrating in general, like just dealing with that and trying to keep that separate because he needs to recover, but I'm trying to deal with my emotions of the fact that he lied and the fact that he doesn't seem to care that he put himself in this situation. And the fact that, again, if he had just listened to my mom and I and just gone in that day, maybe he wouldn't have to deal with this now. Maybe he wouldn't need serious physical therapy and, you know, all of that stuff. So I'm just sitting there like, I'm stewing and mad, but I can't put that out there to him, right? There's nowhere for me to direct that anger right now. And so more lies start to get revealed as I sit there with his girlfriend's sister and the best friend and all that other stuff. And it's just really interesting because they start telling me, you know, oh yeah, your dad, he used to talk about going over to your house all the time and was saying that, you know, like you were constantly expecting him to come over and fix things, that he had to come over and fix your water heater, that he needed to come over and, again, clean your pool or build you a table. They're showing me like pictures of things that he sent to them and said that he built these things for me. And I'm like, I've never seen that living room before. I don't know any of these things. I've never seen that table before. He's never built me a piece of furniture in his entire life because I've always had to build my own furniture. My mom and my Nana and I grew up in a household of very strong women, and my dad really didn't do any of that stuff. We couldn't even really get him to change the batteries in a fire detector or in a smoke detector. Like, he wouldn't do anything. He never did anything with cars. And so it was just so crazy hearing them talk about these things and saying that he used to come and fix all these things for me, and that he would say, oh yeah, like I keep telling her, you know, mija, which he never called me that because I'm not Hispanic, we're Samoan. There's no Hispanic in him at all, so that doesn't make any sense. But, oh, mija, you know, you need to actually let your husband fix some of these things for you. You know, you need to actually make him fix some of these things for you, basically, and like implying that my husband or my fiance was a deadbeat, that he was a loser who wouldn't do anything around the house, and so I had to keep calling my father to come over and fix things for me. This was incredibly triggering to me at that moment because I have a lot of issues with relying on anybody to do anything for me. And a large reason and part of that is because of my dad, because he was never there to do any of the things for me. And so I was raised to not expect people to pitch in and help and to fix things for you. Like, you have to fix things for yourself. You have to Google it and figure it out. Like, I've been very self-sufficient my whole life to a fault. And mostly because, again, I didn't really have a good example of a partner around to help pick up that slack. The only people that I had around were my mom and my Nana, and they were like, no, we do this ourselves. If we need something done, we will fix this ourselves. And so my dad, again, never did that. He lived with us, but he still didn't really do much. Like, we couldn't barely get him to do anything. And so like, even taking me to doctor's appointments and stuff, he wouldn't do that. My mom and I didn't have a car for a while. We couldn't get him to really lend us his car, like all sorts of things. And so, and I'll talk about that stuff later, but yeah, so I was really upset because I'm sitting there thinking, like, you really like talked about my partner like that? Like, and I got very defensive because I absolutely love my partner. I love my boyfriend. He, again, has been so good about helping me get through a lot of those trust issues. And I have to, something as simple as like letting him, we're on an airplane, letting him pull the luggage from overhead for me and not insisting upon like doing it all myself and carrying all the suitcases and stuff. Like, just letting him, you know, take on some of those simple tasks for me have actually been a really hard thing for me to do. And he's been so patient with me and has been so good about, you know, letting me do that. So sorry, I'm gushing about him. But anyway, it made me really angry that my dad would say anything about him when I'm like, literally, he's having to deal with the repercussions of the things that you've done to me. Like, how dare you talk about him like that? So I was really upset. But again, I'm knowing we're buckling in for the long haul because I can't just up and leave. I can't tell him off and give him the middle finger and run because it's my dad. He has no other kids. He doesn't have insurance right now. He needs somebody to make decisions for him. He's not even fully cognizant or aware yet. He's not. So I have to just kind of suck it up and just stay at it. I can't expect his girlfriend to stay. At that point, I was like, you know, this man's lied to you so much. Are you gonna stick around? Like, I wouldn't stick around if I found that out. I definitely wouldn't be there still. So I was just like, you know, I can't rely on this lady. I don't even know her. I can't rely on her to stick around. So I'm just like, I need to suck it up. I'm gonna deal with this. And again, he will have his moment of reckoning when he is out of the hospital. And I think we all kind of just generally agreed not to do a full confrontation until he was out of the hospital. So we all made this kind of pact, like, now is not the appropriate time. So yeah, that was kind of how the first, the next day ended, in the hospital. He had survived the surgery, wasn't out of the woods yet. There was a lot of other stuff that we needed to do. He wasn't allowed to go on blood thinners or anything like that yet. And so he had definitely a high risk of throwing another clot. But you're not allowed to start a blood thinner until after a certain amount of time because they're worried it'll cause more brain bleed. So, you know, he was not out of the woods yet. He was still in the ICU. And it was really scary. He wasn't even able to have any fluids, no liquids, no nothing. He was completely cut off from all of that stuff. So yeah, that's I think I'm going to cut it there because this one ran a little bit longer than I expected it to, but yeah, that's about where we were at, and I'm going to leave it at that. Some spoilers for the next one. There were more, unsurprisingly, more lies that came out because his phone was finally gone through, and there were text messages that were found and all of that other sort of all those other good things. So yeah, we'll talk about that in the next one. Whew, I feel super heated remembering all of these things. So anyway, yeah, I hope you will continue to follow me on this journey. Please remember to keep an open mind and be kind. The truth will follow behind.